Welcome back, everyone, to the Greatest Showdown broadcast for your Long Beach Ninkata, brought to you by Poke Hub. Today marks week 2 of the inaugural season, and Coach Highjumpsean is ready to cement an early lead here in the standings to remain unbeaten. And the Ninkata are currently the number 1 team after week 1. Not saying much, but a commanding start to the season, and he wants to keep it that way. But it all comes down to the effort and maintaining that same focus from week 1 throughout the rest of the season, and what needs to be done in terms of preparation for the matches and the on-field performance. And Coach Sean is going to need that focus today as he takes on a coach that he has not yet had the opportunity to play until now, Coach AsterJ and his Montreal Habsols. Rumor has it that Sean felt a little slighted after an interaction with today's opponent, so a lot of the extra motivation should be felt in today's performance. And before kickoff commences in a few minutes, let's take a look at today's starting lineups presented to you by Poke Hub. And for your convenience, we are now showing each Terra Captain's respective type on the lineups, as you can see visually. So starting with Coach AsterJ, he leads off his squad with a new Paradox Speedster Iron Boulder. While it may be Terra Band, it still boasts an impressive stat distribution that will allow it to take hits and dish out damage, all the while outspeeding the entirety of the Ninkata's roster. Nothing in base form is faster than this Mon on the entire Ninkata roster. And in looking at second position, it's Terra Captain Archaludon, one of the new DLC Pokemon added into the format. And this Pokemon is tough as nails with the stamina ability and that steel typing, and has the option to embrace those softer fairy wings and be a big nuisance with the Terra Fairy typing. In the third position, one of the ultimate Glumons and roll compressors in the game, very similar to Iron Treads, but better in various different ways, of course. We have Great Tusk, and it's definitely one of the most reliable spinners in the entire format. So AsterJ has a very formidable glue piece in that third position. Rounding out in fourth, the Greatest Showdown's very own mascot, the Top Hat Gentleman. It's none other than Galarian Weezing. In that penultimate position, it is AsterJ's, or one of AsterJ's, ace offensive Pokemon, and it's the tongue-tasting frog Greninja, who has that variability on its offensive arsenal, with Battle Bond and Protean as its two abilities to choose from. It'll be interesting to see what AsterJ decides to go with going into this match, but Greninja is on the lineup. And in the final position, the legendary beast of nostalgia, the Sabertooth Striker, the overrated Fangs. Yes, overrated. Fangs, but no bite. Terra Captain Raikou coming in with the Terra Electric to amplify its stab attacks. And sitting on the bench include the Teal Mask deity itself, Ogerpont, and the fiery bird from KFC, Moltres. And the other three are a bunch of nobodies. So let's just move on to the actual fan favorites here, and that, please everyone stand for your starting lineup for the week 2 Long Beach Ninkata, ladies and gentlemen. Leading the charge into this week 2 matchup, making its debut for the first time in Ninkata uniform, the underwater landmine, ready to blow away the competition. It's none other than Overquill. And then coming in to back up the first position is a former Ninkata making its season debut under the new lights of Paldea, the stepsister trapper itself, Rotom Washing Machine. And back for its second straight match, the leader of this team, the god of winds, lend us your wings, Tornadus Therian. And then coming into that fourth position, the Ivory Spinner is back once again and ready to roll out the visitors coming in this week from Montreal, Iron Treads. And after its dazzling debut in week 1, the cosmic force to be reckoned with is back, the team leader in kills so far, the wall of utility, it's none other than Deoxys Defense. And finally, from behind to support the backbone of this team, our Terra Captain from the Auto Shop, the engine of our team. Rev your engines for Revavroom and its moist Terra ability. And providing support on the sidelines are Week 1 Class Acts, Low Kicks, and Dragonite, as well as the patient heroes who will find their time eventually, Mienshao and Terra Captain Ceruledge. The teams are ready for kickoff, so let's get this Week 2 showdown started. And as you can see, both teams are lined up and ready. Here, our Ninkata squad is, we can see from the behind view, and the front view is AsterJ's Montreal Habsols. Of course, we've went through the lineup already, and just to re-clarify what the Terra Captains are, our Chaladon boasting that Terra Fairy typing, and Terra Captain Raikou with a Terra Electric typing. And then Coach Sean opting to leave Terra Ceruledge on the bench again. He is bringing Terra Captain Revavroom with that water typing. So why don't we just look at what they could potentially lead with. Obviously, Tornadus Therian, one of the best, just easy to lead mons in the game with Regenerator, can scout a lot of things off the opponent in terms of like items with knockoff, pivoting, heal off any damage it gets off lead, especially if it's against opposing Scarfers. Just a great lead overall. I kind of expect him to lead with the Tornadus Therian, knowing Sean. But he could also very well lead with the Rotom Wash if he wants to pressure things like Greninja or Tusk off the lead, if he wants to be able to pressure out those Rockers or Spikers. The only thing that he can't pressure out really is that Archaladon, but getting information off of it is going to be very important. As for AsterJ, he could probably lead off with that Archaladon. There's not a whole lot that can outright pressure it outside of maybe potentially an Iron Shreds, but with the stamina ability, it's going to be very difficult. A mon like maybe Deoxys Defense might be able to slowly whittle it down if AsterJ allows Sean that opportunity. Another lead that he could potentially lead with is, again, that Greninja. So I'll be curious to see what Sean opts to lead with here. So why don't we just hop? They're ready to go. Let's just hop right into the match, and for our viewing pleasure, the match between Highjumpsean and AsterJ has started. And Sean does lead with Rotom Wash, opts to not lead with Tornadus Therian, and Aster leads with Archaladon. So two of the expected leads that we potentially got here, as AsterJ's Archaladon is faster than the Rotom Wash here and gets a Stealth Rock up, as Sean goes for a slow Volt Switch here, activates the stamina, but big Volt Switch here, as he's able to scout out what this Archaladon wants to do, and Deoxys comes in, and I imagine Sean wants to get up his own hazards at this point. And Archaladon and Deoxys both get leftovers here. Now, Archaladon is faster than both Rotom Wash and Deoxys. Very good information for Sean there, as Deoxys probably sets up Stealth Rocks here, or Spikes, but instead goes for Thunder Wave, trying to catch a more aggressive switch there. Or in case Archaladon decided to stay in, he throws off a T-Wave here. And obviously that's going to put on a lot of pressure if Aster ever wants to pivot into something like Iron Boulder or Greninja in the future. But Sean decides to swap here, and probably to scout that Toxic that Weezing does happen to pack here. And Tornadus, obviously just that pivot Gloomon, doesn't really mind the Toxic here, as I expect the Torn to either go for a knockoff or a U-turn here just to gain momentum. He does go for U-turn, and Sean probably is going to bring in maybe the Iron Treads here or that Deoxys Defense, and he does bring in Deoxys Defense, and one of them is probably carrying the hazards and is going to want to set them up here. Archaladon obviously hasn't really sustained a lot of chip here, and Sean really hasn't gotten a whole lot of information about the rest of the team, but this Spike, or Stealth Rocks if Deoxys carries it, but it is the Spike just like last week, and the Spike goes up. That Dragon Pulse is doing absolutely nothing to Deoxys. Doesn't even need the Cosmic Power this week, and it absolutely bounces off. I imagine Deoxys can probably set up another Spike here, or go for maybe like a Nightshade to hit the incoming Weezing, but he instead goes for Recover. He wants this thing healthy, probably for the likes of maybe Great Tusk or Iron Boulder in the back, and possibly the Raikou. But he goes into Torn here on the Weezing again, but Aster makes a great double here into Raikou, expecting the Torn to come in as the middle ground again. Obviously, Deoxys did not want to take a Toxic there, so it's probably to hint to Aster maybe some type of setup set. But Torn goes for U-turn here, stays in versus Raikou. Obviously not afraid of any potential leftover. Like, oh yeah, Raikou is leftovers, as I saw, yes. And Raikou predicts the Torn switch into Treads, goes for a Raw Scald, and the Treads gets a booster speed, so it is faster than the Raikou here. And I imagine Aster will be satisfied with that chip damage, but he has to switch out. And he goes into reliable Great Tusk here, who should chew up an EQ very easily. But Sean goes for Endeavor and absolutely dents the Great Tusk. And that thing is already super low. And Sean stays in, goes for Earth Power. It's a special Treads. And this looks like an Assault Vested Great Tusk. It does absolutely no damage. But the Tusk goes for Rapid Spin here and opting not to KO the Treads. And now Sean goes for Substitute. Very questionable play here. I mean, he could just knock him out with an Earth Power, but he opts to click Substitute here, probably expecting maybe a save, but 14% Tusk was non-salvageable at this point. I mean, a very interesting sub play. Definitely a misplay on Coach Sean's part, but he does knock out the Tusk. But now this Treads is even lower, and if a Spike ever goes up, Treads is basically gone from the game. Or if it makes contact with any of its moves, like Rapid Spin versus Rocky Helmet, he can't spin away the rocks, and it dies in the process. But that Endeavor can be very big in the back, as Boulder's forced to come in and waste its booster energy here. Obviously, the Greninja showing it doesn't have Shuriken, as Boulder comes in and clicks Zen Headbutt. Very interesting coverage into this team. I think it only hits the Mienshao super effectively. I guess maybe he's not packing Earthquake for Revavroom, but he goes for SD as Overquill just completely chews this. Even after the Intimidate and the +1, Boulder just dies. Overquill does its job and knocks out Boulder, and Boulder is not a threat anymore, and it's 6v4 right now. Very interesting, as now the Raikou is going to come in, and this can easily probably knock out the Overquill if it's packing Thunderbolt, and it does. I believe Volt Switch is a roll from that point, or a guaranteed live, so Thunderbolt had to come out in order to knock out the Overquill there, and it does. Raikou at a very high HP now. Now, very interesting to see what he decides to revenge with. He can't go Treads because he no longer has the booster. Rotom Wash can't really do much to a Calm Mind Raikou. Revavroom, it's not going to want to take an Electric Hit from Raikou, so he has to go Deoxys here. And Deoxys goes for Psychic Noise. Very good play from Sean there to stop the leftovers from healing the Raikou momentarily. And I imagine he might just spam this to kind of just chip down the Raikou. But wow, Raikou opts to click Terra Electric here, and very big for Aster here. He's going to get a ton of damage off, and there's really no way to revenge this Raikou in the first place. So a very great game decision here for AsterJ to go for the Terra Electric and just kind of plow through this team. And I don't know what Sean has in the back to potentially beat this Mon, and the heal block is gone. And at this point, the Raikou is able to knock out the Deoxys defense, the hero from last week, down for the count with no knockout here. And Raikou just knocks it out, and Sean looks like he's in big trouble here. I don't know what he has in the back. Treads is not faster. Rotom Wash, maybe it's Trick. Tornadus decides to come in. Looks like Sean might just be sacking it off. He goes for a knockoff to knock off the leftovers here, and Raikou's going to probably just claim another Mon, and I don't know what Sean's going to do here. This is a pretty bad position for him because the Treads is so low, and he took that initial Scald to begin with. I don't know what Sean's going to do here as Revavroom comes in, and I don't know if this thing can live a +1 Electric Hit, but it's actually faster. The Revavroom is Choice Scarfed, and it knocks out the Raikou with high horsepower. So he had to probably get it in range of high horsepower, and that's why he ultimately sacked the Torn to get rid of the lefties and get that chip damage. But this is a Scarf Revavroom, very interesting. But because the Raikou Terra, our Archaludon is going to remain a Steel type and not a Fairy type here. And that's pretty bad for Revavroom, as it wants to potentially lock into Gunk Shot in this endgame, but now it can't. It's going to have to rely on the high horsepower. And Rotom Wash comes in on this Weezing, and Weezing not getting a Toxic off, but rather Flamethrowers the Revavroom, gets paralyzed here, probably went for a Toxic as it showed it had earlier. And Rotom Wash going for a Light Screen, very interesting, probably trying to play this pivoting into Revavroom if he needs to, or the Rotom Wash being able to take this hit. I doubt Sean would want to risk the Iron Treads at any point here, because Iron Treads can easily come in on a potential Pain Split and heal itself up, and if it's healthy, it'd be pretty bad for AsterJ. And even then too, the end game, if he has this versus Archaludon, he can just spam Endeavor, and the Revavroom looks really good to just spam high horsepower. But Rotom is just deciding to stay in. I think Sean just doesn't mind taking this trade. He needs to weaken the Weezing so he can open up the high horsepower endgame. Otherwise, he's dealing with 2 immunities, and I doubt he wants to be Terra Water versus Archaludon and Greninja. So I think his best bet is to just go for the high horsepower. But he does knock out the Weezing here, and the Light Screen is going to end, but it'll be interesting to see what he goes into. He can't go Archaludon here because a slow Volt Switch would be very good for Sean here, positioning-wise, to get in his treads. So it just really depends on what this Greninja is. I don't think Choice Specs Dark Pulse is enough to knock out Rotom Wash from this range, and a Volt Switch would knock it back. But he does go for the Trailblaze here, and Trailblaze, he is Protean, and it's going to do 51%. That looks very physically based, as Rotom Wash is mainly Spadef here, but that's still a base 50 move. And the Volt Switch is not going to do enough damage to even remotely kill this Greninja. And in comes the Revavroom. It has to come in. And at this point, Sean has to click Gunk Shot to revenge this Greninja. But if he goes Archaludon, as Aster does, locking into Gunk Shot is bad here. So let's see what he has. He clicks Gunk Shot. I would assume maybe Sean has Parting Shot on this set if it is Scarf. And he considered going for it there. But he had to scout what the Greninja had. But Aster playing it safe here. I would assume because of the position, Aster can afford to maybe double here. And he does double. And the Rotom stack, obviously Sean has the luxury of not having to make an over prediction here. And just playing it safe, Greninja gets in and takes another Spike, which is not the end of the world for Sean here, as he goes for Trailblaze and obviously knocks out the Rotom Wash. And it's basically that same position. Revavroom comes in, and what can this Greninja do to Revavroom? And what is Sean going to do? Is he going to click Parting Shot expecting the Archaludon to come back in? Or is he going to click Gunk Shot and knock it out? Or maybe he's going to click High Horsepower and just pray that the Greninja can't hit him like with multiple hits. It is a physically based Greninja by the looks of it. And it clicks Ice Punch. Is that its best move to hit Revavroom? As Rev clicks Parting Shot. So he expects Archaludon, but it looks like Ren only has Ice Punch to hit Revavroom, and that's not going to do a whole lot of damage. Treads comes in, takes more damage from the rocks, but he can't stay in, and the Greninja, I don't know what it's going to click here. He could double into Archaludon if he wants to make that play, but he just goes for Ice Punch, and again, Rev is going to tank this hit. And it really just depends what he locks into. I don't think Sean wants to lock into Gunk Shot. I think Archaludon can live the Earth Power from Treads. He needs the chip damage from Rev. So Sean has to stick with clicking High Horsepower here and hope that he can't get 2-shot from this range based off of that damage. If the Ice Punch is not a 2-shot from here unless he gets a crit or a freeze on this following turn, and Sean has to land the High Horsepower. It all comes down to this. And the Revavroom does not get frozen, does not get crit, and he does land the High Horsepower, and Greninja is down. And it all comes down to this. Can he land one more High Horsepower on this Archaludon to put it in range of Earth Power from Iron Treads? This is the game right here. Miss, and we lose. Land and we win. And land that we do. Revavroom doing its service here, getting 2 kills and the crucial chip on Archaludon. Archaludon knocks out Rev. Rev doing its absolute best here. And Iron Shreds, whew, even after that substitute play from Sean, has enough HP to come in here on rocks and win this game for the Nincada to improve to 2-0 on the season. Wow, wow, wow. Iron Shreds knocking out Archaludon here. What a W for the Nincada. Wow, 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 wow. Very tight match. A 4% Iron Shreds to clean up the game here. And wow, that had my heart racing in the commentary. I feel like I was speaking at 10,000 miles per hour. And I'm sure the Nincada are ecstatic. I mean, they're probably speechless. Coach Highjumpsean, we're going to hear from him in just a few moments in the Aftergame Presser about this matchup. But wow, what a game from not even just Highjumpsean, but Coach AsterJ coming in here, putting up one hell of a fight. Obviously, maybe those paraturns with Galar Weezing could have been a little bit differently, but Sean opting to have to sack off his Torn to put that Raikou in range of a Scarf Revavroom. Totally unexpected Scarf Revavroom there. I thought maybe it was going to be some setup WinCon with Terra Water, but Coach Sean knows it best, and he loves using the Terra Revavroom, or just Revavroom in general, in his matches. So he has a very strong bond with him, and he knows exactly how to utilize the Revavroom in the best fashion. But yeah, why don't we just take it over to the Aftergame Presser? But first, today's broadcast is brought to you by Duncan Knee Deep. To get knee deep, become a master of genetics. Call 1-800-CAN'T-DIE. And that is how you can become your own master of genetics today and be knee deep in Pokemon. But yeah, why don't we head over to the Aftergame Presser? All right. Well, what a game that was. My voice is very hoarse after all the yelling I did during the match, but Iron Shreds clutching it out, Revavroom landing every high horsepower in that end game for us, and none more important than that final one against Archaludon. I'd like to just give a shout out to AsterJ. He's someone that I respect a lot as a battler. We were teammates in the Draft Premier League when I was a captain, and he ended up being MVP that season for our team and for the entire DPL, and we went to win it all. And so I wanted the opportunity to finally be able to play him, and what a game it was. It was close to the very end. A lot of just grit ball out there. I mean, we were just making switches, trying to make plays when we could. I'm just very proud of my lineup, my preparation going in, and obviously you guys see my game notes here. But yeah, this is basically what I told my team going into the match. We kind of needed to just T-Wave threats. Obviously, Deoxys defense doing what it needed to do there, but I wanted him to be able to T-Wave certain threats and punish any aggressive offensive pivoting that Aster might potentially do with his offensive mons like Boulder and Greninja, or even slowing down things like Archaludon. Getting a para on something on a turn could be crucial in terms of chipping it, giving me free turns to chip something down. And I figured that was going to be useful. Aster made use of pivots with like his Greninja last week versus T-Row, and he was pivoting on the Darkrai with his Greninja on like Sludge Bomb and all that. He was utilizing like Weezing into Greninja on Latios to pivot on Dragon move into Psychic move. So I was trying to make sure he couldn't just aggressively pivot and try to punish more passive sets. And so I figured it was better for me to try and utilize T-Wave to kind of neutralize his faster threats, especially since I didn't bring my low kicks this game, which first impression does handle Iron Boulder and Greninja pretty well specifically Battle Bond Greninja. If it was Protean, it'd be a little bit different, but I didn't bring my priority this time. I didn't even bring Ceruledge for the boulder, so I knew I needed some form of speed control if it came down to it, and it was a Fizz Def Deoxys defense. He put in the work, got up the spike, and T-Wave that Weezing, which did kind of prove useful in that interaction with Rotom Wash. And then for Torn, I just needed him to scout things, kind of pivot on the neutrally on some things like Duraludon or Tusk, even Weezing. Tusk, not really, but it could revenge it. Mainly wanted to knock off items like leftovers. Aster really likes using his leftovers for passive recovery on these fatter mons like Archaludon or even Tusk or Raikou. So I figured it was important to kind of just knock it off. Especially if Raikou was screens, eventually I would want to knock off the Light Clay. As he did bring screens Raikou last week. And we even packed Brick Break on Torn T in case he did bring screens and I needed to be able to remove them. And obviously we needed to keep Wash healthy. I'd led with it, but I didn't expect Archaludon to attack me off rip. I thought he might just go for Stealth Rocks, and he did off of lead, and it gave me the slow momentum to kind of work around that. The reason I want to lead Torn is I didn't actually want to have a fast pivot versus it because I had no idea what it was going to click. I'd rather just get the slow pivot, and I was Spadef anyways. But I mainly needed to keep it healthy for Battle Bond Specs Greninja because +1 Specs Dark Pulse was doing a massive amount of damage, I believe up to like 63%. And so I needed it to be very healthy here so I didn't get absolutely obliterated in an end game there, especially since I didn't have low kicks. And then, again, I wasn't sure if it would be Battle Bond or not. I had to take a prep. I had to make sure I was prepared for it and all that. And my priority, I did tell the team, I think it's going to be Protean Greninja because of that. Having the Ice Stab as well to pressure something like Tornadus T, if he needs to revenge that, was also very crucial from it. So I figured that the Greninja was probably going to be Protean, but I couldn't neglect Battle Bomb there. And then I had to weaken Arch. It was the main kind of road bump, including Tusk, to Revavroom. I needed that thing weakened so I could high horsepower, or I could even spam Terra Water, Terra Blast in an endgame. It was a Scarf Revavroom, as you could tell in that match. But it was really hard to lock because he opted to Terra the Raikou, which was very smart on his end. I had no real counterplay to that. Treads was already weakened from Scald, so I couldn't. He was just going to kill that. I had to basically make that entire sequence with sacking off Deoxys. I kind of regret going for the spike, but ultimately it ended up helping versus Greninja. But I had to sack off my Torn and knock it off. High horsepower was not going to kill a max HP Raikou, so I had to sack off my Torn there in order to get my Revavroom in to revenge it. And if he opted to save it, it would have actually been a little bit tougher of an endgame for me, but he probably didn't expect Scarf Revavroom. It's not a very common bring, and I knew it might be able to catch him off guard, or he might have just thought like, oh, I just have absolutely nothing for this Raikou at this point. And I was able to catch him off guard, and he ended up sacking it. In my eyes, he ended up sacking it. I thought he could have scouted and went into Archaludon or G-Weezing, but he opted to stay in, and we were able to take advantage all the way through the end game. And then the Treads set, it was a very good failsafe. I felt like it was very tough to actually wear down Tusk and Archaludon, especially for Rev. I needed something to be able to do that, so we ran a Endeavor Treads with booster energy so I can get it in on Raikou without the fear of him predicting like he did with Scald. I would pressure him out. He couldn't tell if I was physical or not. I ended up being special because I needed a way to hit Tusk harder, and I wanted a way to get around stamina on Archaludon if he opted not to Terra it. So ended up working out for us there. And that Endeavor was able to pressure him all in that entire endgame, especially since there was that one play with Greninja. He opted to Ice Punch on my Revavroom coming in after I swapped out Treads. It was after I had Parting Shotted into Treads. I thought if he had SD, he was going to go for it there. Based on his set, he was Trailblaze, I think. And I think he was Expert Belt as well. I thought he might go for Swords Dance there if his best move was Ice Punch for Rev. And so I expected the SD there. And I think based off of rules, he might have been favorable to actually win that exchange with Rev and just win the game with Greninja, but he opted to just Ice Punch. He said he told me after when we after the match finished, he said he expected potentially an Endeavor there from Treads, but I told him I needed Treads alive in order to beat Archaludon, otherwise it was just futile. I think he should have SD'd, and I think he agreed as well. But obviously got a little bit fortunate there with some of the plays to try and get endgame rev in. But I think some of the notable misplays I had was the Treads clicking sub for no reason was pretty dumb on my end. I should not have clicked that. I think I was trying to make a read that he might go like wheezing or something, and then I can get like a spin and like a 2-for-1 kill. But I should have just realized how important Treads was for the end game with Endeavor, Earth Power, and all that. So I definitely should have just not subbed and just taken the kill on Tusk. But again, live and learn. We didn't get punished for it, but it's not something we can't learn from to improve upon in the future. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the match this week, and we'll see you guys for week 3 when we play, I believe, Coach Fist to Your Doom. And yeah, I'll get the boys ready. We did come out with a dub, which is great. We're 2-0. Going to try and be 3-0 after next week, but there's a lot we could learn from this week. There were some messy plays there. The end game was pretty messy, but we were able to adapt on the fly, and I think that's a good sign for how play can improve upon throughout this season. Obviously, we have the ability to play, not just rely on our prep, which I think is pretty important. But yeah, thank you guys for coming to the presser, and we'll see you for week 3.